nicer than mine, like.
Yeah, he like goes in like the
That's pretty special.
We have a new screen, huh?
turquoise. Oh, yeah.
It's great. I could watch Ted eat. That's right. That's what you're thinking, right, Kevin? Hi, Ted. What are you eating there, Ken?
Just a bowl of soup.
Bowl of soup.
Trying to get over this flu that I've had all
Oh,
week.
hungry too.
Oh boy,
Oh, now we're getting it all in.
it's a nice delay.
We're not recording yet, so you guys are ready. I will hit record. It will be
Ted,
This is on
Ted
like a
clearly
30
doesn't
second
care.
delay.
What?
It's like a 30-second delay.
And I was like, you guys spelled it the same.
A little different.
Not the picture, just the sound. Echo canceling.
Who are we missing? Lori and
Dad, can you hear us now?
Yes.
That's
well, I think we have a quorum without Ted. So we'll even if he's
All right. I am still here.
he'll figure it. Are you there, Ted?
I am here.
Okay, good. We weren't sure whether you were.
Well,
hear us
I
or not.
lost your sound for a second, but I got it back now.
Can you turn the sound on this one off?
Every time is a new adventure.
Oh my God. It's bad enough that he's eating. I'm gonna lick the bowl.
I am in full attendance. Are you there?
And I think that's appropriate. I didn't want Bike Ped to take the lead on that. I think there's too many different groups involved, too many things that have to be thought through. So I think that's great. I think we'll wait and see how that develops. Is that me?
No, we got.
It's like a delayed,
There you go.
Let's see if that works.
Nailed it.
we good?
Yeah.
Okay. So the next thing on really our plate, I think, as a commission is to try to serve up sort of next steps for, we're calling implementation of MAP. We started, I think we talked about this last month, and there's a new list of 12 points, and they were included in the packet. This time it was a little bit changed from the first list. And I've been thinking a lot and share with some of you just how do we tackle a 12-point list? I mean, there's a lot there, and I think we have to prioritize that list and figure out how to go to work on a few items. So I thought the first step tonight, I just kind of share with you my thoughts on where we are in the prioritization of this list, and then we could have a conversation about whether those are the right ones. And then, next we could figure out how to sort of start tackling them. Okay, so the things I had on my list, I had 5 of them. I tried to start out with 4, but I had to add 5, and we might end up adding 6. But the first one was Highway 133. I know that the town, the trustees and staff are working with CDOT. CDOT was in February, and I went to that meeting. In terms of sort of laying out where roundabouts will go, where crosswalks might go. But I also thought there were a lot of things sort of not on 133, at least adjacent to 133, that I think have come up. It probably worth spending some time on and trying to think through. And I've listed some of those. Every time we seem to do something on 133, something else, the box sort of pushes out. And I think a lot of the problems we've heard from people coming in about 8th Street and Cowan are results of 133 backing up. One of the things that was talked about with CDOT was, and we brought that up in a meeting months ago about what the roundabout at Industry Way. Hey, Michael. And, would that lead to a future connection of Industry Way, connecting it through over the Rio Grande and over 8th Street? There's been a design in place. And, there was not really an answer to that. And I think some things like that are worth digging into, figuring out the speed, how to control speeds coming off of 133. Again, there are a lot of things that 133 touches that don't have to do with crossing 133. So I thought it'd be worth time for this group in some form or fashion to start thinking about those things. Number 4, traffic calming. We broke down it really into 2 groups. I think the pilot programs inform so much of what we might want to do. That would really be one thing we would want to work on. And I put that in the traffic calming category, as well as 4B, which is another idea we had, just to come up with some other basic concepts that we might serve up to the town, the trustees in the town, to think about general traffic calming. I chose number 6. I think it's important to try to inform the public that, the town's listening, and we've asked them to be really patient and fill out a lot of surveys. And we've heard a lot of people through emails and direct comments at these meetings to, have various concerns. And I think it's time to start making sure we're educating people about what we're doing and, why we're doing things. Number 7 is easy, right? That's kind of something we should probably be doing every year. But I think it also starts to show the town that things are moving forward. If we start tackling those things. And 11, how many is that? That's 1, 2, I'm counting 4 A and B as 1, so that's 4. And then I added this checklist concept. David served that up, and I appreciate that, David. I think that, and he served it up, and then he gave us, and I think Dave would say, it was a quick off the top of his head list of potential ideas for a checklist. But I think as we implement almost every item, some of these ideas on this checklist would be relevant to making sure we're doing it right, that we're thinking about all the factors, we're thinking about all the people, we're thinking about all the interactions. So I appreciate David serving up that implementation list, and perhaps have something we should get done soon so we can overlay it on all the other work we do. And that list was, so those are sort of my 5. And I guess I'd just love to hear from you guys as whether or not you think those are a good 5 to start on. Whether you think we're missing something and we should start somewhere else. So. What do you think? What's that?
Can you just briefly run through the 5?
Let me run through them again, and I'll just highlight them. 1 was the first one is 1. The second one is 4 A and B. The third one is number 6. The fourth one is number 7, and the 5th one would be number 11, which is developing a checklist that sort of guides almost everything else, I think, right? You sort of need a checklist to make sure you're picking the right things, and as you go through the things, you're doing them right. So I'd love to, figure out how this group can, either here or in some breakout sessions. I know Age Friendly Carbondale has offered to work with us in some breakout workshops to start tackling some of these things if people are willing and able to spend a little extra time outside of the meetings. And but the first step is I just want to make sure we're going after the first 4 or 5, that there's sort of some consensus there.
If I could get on.
I think you're on, yeah.
I guess my concern is that the time is of the essence. It's already March, and I think a priority should be to do whatever we can to start implementing some of these things this summer as soon as, we need direction from Kevin about how realistic that is, but I wonder about how much time we should spend on working on things without some direct input on what the priorities are from the view of the trustees, and also what the town thinks we can get done and what some of the town priorities are. I just wonder, I don't want to spend 3-4 months working on this and then find out that no, we can't do that, or the town's thinking in different terms, or the trustees are thinking about other priorities. So it seems like that ought to be the first step. Where are we all together on what we can get accomplished and how fast we can get that done and get started? I'd love to hear from Kevin and Chris on that too.
Yeah, well, why don't we get to that? It's a legitimate concern. Why don't we? All right, we'll just talk about it. Some of these things on this list are just sort of ongoing, right? They're ongoing, beginning the process of. This is my view, right? They're beginning the process of getting a list of things that we'll call implementing MAP, right? And getting that list, getting a framework around that list, and getting initial ideas just is going to take a little time. I think that's just the nature of that work. All right. I do appreciate the concern. We're in March, we're going into a time of year, spring and summer, Kevin, when a lot of this stuff can be evaluated and tested or done. So there is that reality of just what's on us. If I look at this list, I think in terms of getting things done, Kevin, there's always seems to be ongoing work and a budget to do the low cost maintenance stuff, right? Every year I've been here, let's fix this sidewalk, let's do this striping. There's always a budget for that. So I assume that's work that can go ongoing. That's sort of number 5, right? The first layer, low cost traffic calming and safety projects. I know you don't have the budget memorized, but my guess is you have some money in the budget for basic maintenance and upkeep. And the biggest one, I think, of this 5 that would cause money to be spent and staff time to be spent would be number 4. And that's really the pilot programs. 4A, pilot programs as recommended in MAP. So I guess, Rick, what I'm saying is that we can start working through this list as well as getting things done, I guess based on the conversation
That some of them were accepted and some were not. And I just don't think we have that kind of time. We want to get some things done. We don't want to be submitting things and then waiting. Let's figure out up front what we can do and what the trustees would like to see as priorities. And let's work on that. I think that's, for me, is partly the result of taking so much time with the MAP process and just feeling like we want to be more efficient now to get started.
Well, I would take that to mean there's other things other than the 5 I proposed that you'd want.
But I don't know if the trustees agree. Those are the 5 things that they would, I know they're very, very committed to 133. That's definitely my impression is that that's a big priority for the trustees, but that's all I know for sure.
Right.
So-
Well, I think for the time being, we'll rely on Kevin and Chris to maybe relay some of this stuff to the trustees and give feedback. In the meantime, Kevin, I guess the question that I see, other than the broader, question Rick's asking, which is where would the trustees like us to spend our time? Is it realistic to think that some money could be spent on number 7 and number 4A this year? 4A being the pilot programs to address sort of traffic calming, and 7 being, low hanging fruit in terms of traffic calming and safety.
Yes, to a certain.
You might not be on. Are you on?
Yeah, I'm on.
Okay.
This is a touchy mic. Yes, with the caveat of I don't think we're going to be able to have the time or the resources to implement like every piece of tactical urbanism on the 8th Street and on the Hendrick Drive one. At the
Right.
last meeting, I thought we had talked about focusing on a couple intersections. The bigger thing with either one of these is knowing where we're going to do it. And I don't think there's any. I can't think of like a place where I would go do this here because we have a major issue that we need to try to figure out. So I think we can take some guidance on where you guys would like to go, as long as it's not all over town everywhere all at once.
Yeah.
And
Sounds like a movie.
That's not fair to steal a movie title. Anybody get that reference? Kevin didn't seem to. It was a movie.
unintentional.
No, I understand that point. And I think to that point and to this discussion, Rick, not putting aside your larger concern, which I appreciate, I think there's some work that could come out of this commission that could help guide the pilot program and low-cost traffic calming and safety issues based on our observations, taking the observations of MAP, mixing together, coming back and saying, if you got some money to spend on low-cost first layer safety and traffic calming stuff, this is where we think it should go, right?
Right, and the bigger thing, we talked about this last time, is if I want to know where those locations are, and I don't think we need to decide tonight. I think knowing it, talking about it, figuring out at the April meeting would be pretty good timing.
Right.
Because the first thing we want to do in any of these is collect data before we do anything, so we can see what we tried and see if it had any impact once it's implemented. So the first thing I need to know is, where do I need to go collect data?
Yeah, what's the timing for that? Kevin, when would you feel comfortable putting out the counters?
I would think probably mid-April.
Mid-April, yeah.
Yeah. Like I said, it's more just, where are we gonna put them? How long are we gonna leave them there? Obviously, I shouldn't say obviously, in my opinion, I think it would be good to collect data while school is still in session.
Mhm.
So we want to get that done. Then we can do some of the implementation during the summer. We can get some summer feedback data as well, but then get some fall data when school's back in session.
Right. The and one question I had about this, I know that the pilot programs did two things. They identified a number of potential infrastructure things to test, and they also identified Hendrick and 8th. And we can't test them all, right? That's too much. And I don't think we want to test them all at once anyway, because then you wouldn't know which ones are working and which ones are most effective.
Thank you for saying that, because that is very important in what I do for a living.
Right.
If you change multiple variables, how in the world do you know which one had an impact?
Right. So in terms of testing, and this is, one of the points I'd make to the commission is that I think it would be helpful to Kevin if the commission were able to provide feedback on, other than Hendrick and 8th, maybe there's another street or two where we might measure and test, just so we can spread out geographically and test more infrastructure things. Fair enough?
Yeah, keeping in mind, if we start mid-April, we'll have probably enough time to test maybe 6 different locations.
Yeah, I wasn't even thinking that many, but that's a good number to have. And then also to provide some feedback and just to generate discussion. I'm sure, Kevin, you have some ideas too on which pilot items we might want to test. So locations and items would be things that would be helpful to serve up to you. Locations first, starting in April, and then potential infrastructure items second, that would maybe get going sometime in May.
Well, I think if we have a good discussion in April, we might be able to get through both of those things. I would think about, there's kind of 2 pieces that I've heard repeatedly since I've been here. One is everybody speeds in town. So if what we're looking to try is traffic calming, then I think some of those locations on Hendrick and 8th, and there's probably other locations that you guys have heard feedback from, or you may have experienced, where we could try those as well. The more difficult ones are going to be how do we get people out of cars and using different modes of transportation in these different corridors. I think that's going to take a little bit more time and thought. So I might, this first year, kind of focus on the speeding locations and see if we can find effective ways to calm traffic in those areas.
I agree. I think that's, so Rick, it's not a perfect answer to your question, because I understand your concerns, but I think, these here are 2 concrete things that I think, low-cost traffic common safety, I think is easily, everybody's going to accept that. And there's probably money for it. And just by the virtue of the fact that the trustees approved MAP, and the pilot program was, I think, pretty favorably viewed by the trustees in that discussion. And they understand that the time constraints around this, that they would support that as well.
I wonder if, Chris, could you comment on where you think the trustees are and whether they would support that approach?
I do think definitely the number one focus is, as you said, on 133 and trying to make sure those, you know, that there's stuff going on there. But the map, I think, lays it out fairly well with, I think Hendrick and 8th we're perfectly happy to start there. I think that's what it says, and we
Right.
adopted it. And I think they are different, and it's going to be interesting to see how they yeah, it's hard to figure out how do you eliminate or, you know, make a pure test, you know, for yourself for things. I guess the thing I would be curious, like Hendrick is a very wide street, and I would be curious to explore what a protected bike lane would look like on there with parking, push parking out, and maybe, I don't know if it has to be two-way or whatever, but I think exploring like some level of like can you get calming and a facility at the same time, a separated facility for bikes at the same time. Like in that context, I feel like you almost potentially could solve a lot of stuff if you have just a line that's parking the cars and narrowing that travel lane.
Right.
Quite a bit, but you know, we'd have to see.
Yeah.
But I think we're happy to see things. I think everyone's on board with seeing stuff happen. It's really mostly just about like also just respecting Kevin and his staff and not over managing them. Now we've given them a lot of guidance, I feel like, and now at some point stop managing and just let it be a little patient for stuff to happen.
Okay.
I did not pay him to say that.
So I think those are two things clearly and you know, right now, maybe that's enough, right? I mean, you know, if we're trying to work towards deadlines of spring data collection and trying to think through what kind of pilot program items we'd like to see set up where, and think through you know, what places right now, if we had $50,000 or whatever to fix some things and spruce up crosswalks and things, where we'd spend it, maybe that's enough. But I also think there's more capacity potentially with the help of, it's been offered by Age Friendly to add extra voices and brains and insights into this, that we could tackle, you know, another issue or two. So, you know, again, I just open up to you guys. I think, and some of these are longer term projects. I think they're not, you know, the first two we just talked about, people should see action, right? People should start seeing things happen, which is important. The other ones identified are a little bit more about planning or creating lists, priority checklists that will get us ready to execute. So there's not a lot of things on here that are intended to happen right away, but also I think there are things that for too long, we haven't laid the groundwork on these things, and then we catch ourselves sort of behind, right? You know, one of these days, the question again is going to come up, should Industry Way go through? And, you know, it came up, Chris, at the trustee meeting with CDOT, and there's not an answer to that. Now, I'm not saying Bike Ped has an answer, but I think it's in the purview of Bike Ped to start generating some thoughts about that so we can elevate the discussion to staff and the trustees, so we can push. And so that's where some of these other items are sort of why they're sort of on my list. Ted, yeah.
So I had a question about what your intentions were with this lengthy list of approximately 12 items, each of which seemed to be pretty complicated topics. And I wondered, considering the things that we know are going to be starting to take effect this year, if you wanted to break down each one of these items that are on the list and make each one a topic for a monthly meeting where we, you know, put our brains to the map document in responding to each specific question that's on that list so that we can come together and come up with a list of priorities related to each specific item so that when the time comes to that Kevin says, okay, we're ready to do what's the next thing that you want to, recommend as a priority, then we've got, a list of those things. But each one of them seemed to be quite complicated questions that you raised with each one of those items. And I wondered how you wanted to approach that versus, for example, breaking us up into small groups that just get together and talk about, our ideas related to each specific project, and then start to formulate a package, related to each of those items.
Right.
How you wanted to approach that. I mean, it seemed like your proposal of all of those items was a very complicated process in itself.
I think if I didn't hear you everything, but I think what you're just asking about is a process by how to move through the list. Is that
Yeah.
kind of, I think, Ted, that I do want to talk about all of these at some point at a commission meeting. I think they should be talked about with the entire group in a public forum with our trustee liaison and our staff liaison here. I would like to move it a little faster than, one a month. And I think also that it's really helpful if the conversation can be advanced a little bit before it comes to the wider group, which is kind of the idea. And I think it's really helpful if we can bring in some other perspectives from Age Friendly or elsewhere, so that those voices can be heard when we have a broader discussion here. So that's really what I'm trying to accomplish by the sort of the framework I've laid out. Does that answer your question?
Well, it seems like we're going to end up spending each meeting sitting around talking about different points from each item.
Yeah.
And I don't know how we're going to end up resolving any of those specific questions.
Right.
Well, one thing that we had talked about of whether we could meet, in smaller groups, do we know any more about that?
Well, if we meet less than 3, so there's 2 people, then we're not in violation of the sunshine laws.
Could that include a third person from a different organization?
What's that?
Could that include a third person from a different organization?
The rule applies to 3 people from our commission.
So
An
Age
unlimited
Friendly,
number of other people,
pardon?
an unlimited.
So
number
Age
of
Friendly
other
could
people.
pitch in and help.
We could have
and
the
have a bigger
entire
group. Okay.
Age Friendly
Clarify.
Carbondale, as long as Ted's not there, because he's on both.
Right.
And if we felt like we needed to have 3 or more outside of a monthly commission meeting, then Lauren has told me to use that judiciously. So we don't want to have too many of those. And we would require a 24-hour notice to be placed on the website and contact Patrick, and he could take care of that.
So no minutes, recording, those sorts of.
We did talk about that, and if we had a 3 or more people, public notice, if it comes to that, we'll double check. But what I was told is probably a good idea to take minutes, but you don't have to. And if we do want to take them, it can be taken by somebody present at the meeting. Doesn't have to be anybody from the staff.
But if each small group is addressing a specific item, then they'll want to write down whatever their priorities are that they see within that specific item to bring to the whole group.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, these smaller committees will need to pretty much, come to the commission meeting and say, this is what we're thinking. What does the commission think?
Right. Yeah, and the idea is not make decisions, decide policy. The idea is to really, it's a workshop concept, brainstorm around some ideas so that when we bring it to this commission, we can have a head start, right? Where we've got one or two people who can say, okay, we met for an hour. These are locations we think are important. Here's why. These are the things we think are important to test, and here's why. And then we can get through that in 15 minutes and then have a productive conversation.
And these meetings, since it is a public notice, needs to be in a place where people can attend, correct?
Public place, but I think, yeah,
Okay. So it sounds like the main thing is having a site that allows people to come, being able to give enough notice that the meeting's happening.
Mhm.
I mean, yeah, hopefully somebody would be making notes.
Yeah, and the third thing is, I think, let's just not do it every week, right? Let's, if we can function with, how many people we need anyway. Age friendly has helped, and I think that's beneficial, have offered to help, because it's nice to have different perspective. And we may be able to reach out to other people on whatever topic, right? If it's about Hendrick Drive, maybe somebody from Hendrick Drive wants to, offer their opinion, and we can invite them to talk. But if we can keep it to two people from the commission, that's efficient, and it avoids having to send out lots of notices.
So, bottom line is recommendation is if we can do it with two, and if we're trying to do a brainstorming, it'd be awesome to have people from other areas, but
Right.
then you might just say, really, what's the difference between two people or three? It's like, okay, sure, three's better, but two works and he's easier.
Yeah, and there's
But-
enough topics, I think, that
but-
just in terms of imposing on people's time outside of these meetings
Right.
and what people have available, it's to spread the brain power of the commission around a little bit is probably a good idea.
But that's nice to know. I mean, it sounds like we can do more than two, takes a little bit more planning,
Right.
but it is available to us. And before we didn't know that. I mean, we really.
No, I think we now know that, right?
Yeah.
But I wonder, based on what we heard from Kevin and from Chris, if we should focus between now and April on 4A, B, and 7, tactical urbanism, some speeding issues, some of the low-cost items, because that's an area that we can really make things happen quickly. I think that's, I alluded to that, and I think that's probably a good suggestion. I mean,
it's only 4 weeks, and there's a lot in those two things to digest. If there's only two topics, then maybe we'll split the commission in half and we'll have two public meetings that we'll have to post on the website. I don't know, but we'll have to figure that out. But I think it would be nice if the commission could somehow figure out how to break up into 2 or 3 groups this month, depending on people's availability, and working with some other folks from Age Friendly, try to brainstorm for an hour or two on these things and then bring them back for the April meeting. And then if that's the case, then we can see how that goes, and we can save the other things on this list for once we get the pilot program up and running. Does that seem like a good plan of attack to people?
Yeah, I
mean,
mean, for the sake of moving forward, I would love to maybe talk about picking people to work on them and when we're gonna meet so that we can move forward.
Yes,
Thank you.
good idea.
Let's do that.
Right. Go ahead,
Can I
Michael.
just ask a question? To me, 4A and 7 feel pretty similar, almost like doing the same thing, but in 2 different places. One's on the 2 pilot projects. And 7 is kind of like almost starting some more pilot projects somewhere else.
Yeah, I see it a little, I think, let me see, how is 7?
Only, I think 7 does focus on the like low cost, no cost even, where I do think 4A does seem like it has to.
It could just be the way it's worded, and maybe we should work on that, Michael, if there's, similar enough that it raises a question.
To me, the 4A is, I mean, that's just painting fake roundabouts and stuff.
No, well,
right?
4A, I think you know, we have a list, and I don't know what the list is of potential tactical projects. But there were a number of them in MAP, more than 5, probably less than 10, I don't remember, of potential things we could try to calm traffic. You know, Chris, I'm not sure if bike lanes were on there, but that's another one that should probably be tested.
Yeah,
Are we
they are on
talking-
here. I mean, I've got it in front of me. Bike lanes, traffic circle, raised crosswalks, several raised crosswalks, strike bulb out by 133, which is a bunch. And Kevin said we can't do all those, but we could prioritize them.
You would test them in
Yeah.
up to 6, 8 potentially different locations.
That was for Hendrick.
So those are things I think specifically targeted items, just mentioned specifically targeted places that we've measured speeds and car counts to see what the impact of these projects would be. Number 7, I view more as, you know, the crosswalk hasn't been repainted for 5 years, or, you know, that bulb out would really be beneficial here based on maybe looking at the list of the MAP project list. You know, there might be, you know, some on there that are obvious to whoever's looking at them, like, yeah, that's a clear route to school, that's a priority quarter, that's a place where I know if MAP listed 20 bulb outs, these 2 might be the most important, right? So things like that, you know, completing that sidewalk or fixing that sidewalk. I see 7 more in that category rather than traffic calming.
The way I read it is more 7 is general traffic calming that fits into the tactical urbanism, like that might be applied as part of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Maybe it should really read just safety rather than traffic calming too. Traffic calming is being focused somewhere else. Does that make sense, Michael?
Yeah, that's a little more clear to me. I almost feel like you could do, like, the results from 4A might help inform some
They
of
might, yeah, they might.
what
Yeah.
we want to do in number 7.
I think the idea with 7 was, in addition to 4A, where hopefully those will be visible, let's start getting some stuff done, you know? It's been a long time and things are kind of always getting done, but I think maybe get some things done that were in MAP or that are MAP adjacent to, we can start to, as we move into our public relations campaign, we can present.
I mean, it could be as simple as that we, you know, instead of a pilot project, it's just let's repaint every crosswalk in town that's
Right.
starting to fade. That's
Right.
what we do as part of 7. That's what's a really more of a holistic all-town approach for somebody that would have an impact.
Okay. I think it's a little different. I think and we can clarify how those groups would work. But so if we're working off trying to form 2 groups around the pilot program, 4A and number 7, I guess my question is who's around to help work on it this month? Michael, you around? You available, you think? Or you want to think about
Second
it?
part of the month.
Huh?
Second part of the month. Yeah.
Second part of the month. I know you're, and again, this is not required. I'm not trying to pressure anybody. You know, if people have time and they're able to, you know, spend a little time, then we can go that way. Ted, did you raise your hand?
Yes, I'm around.
Yeah. So I believe Andy and Lori are available too. So we have everybody and maybe Michael and maybe more of him at the end of the month, depending on his work schedule. Dave, are you going to be around or you didn't raise your hand, did you? You're going to be gone a lot.
Yeah, I'm gone the whole month. So.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Can I get that job to go with you all? You're always going somewhere.
This is actually not for a job.
You're just, okay, good. You're just going to go and,
I'm going to go learn Spanish.
okay. Oh, good. I love that. Okay. So we have 9 members and we have 2 that, Michael, I'm going to put you on hold for the time being, and David. So we have 7 people, and that is three too many. We have two topics and we're trying to limit it. Did anybody in the room have any thoughts about a public meeting around these two things? Patrick? You don't have to answer. You seem reluctant.
I'll help him. As Lauren said, it's fine if you tell us when it's happening so we can do the appropriate public noticing. One of the things that I think she hit on in her conversation with you, Matt, was making sure that it truly, even if nobody from the public shows up, maybe making sure that it is happening in a place that is publicly accessible and in a place, not like a bonfire coffee where it's so loud in there that if somebody came to listen to it more, there's all kinds of Third Street Center has rooms. We have some rooms here.
Right.
Just making sure that it's available. And then regardless of whether you have to or not, I think it would be highly advisable to take minutes. It doesn't have to be verbatim minutes, but to these guys' point, you're going to come back and talk about this anyway. You're going to need kind of a checklist. So just make that your minutes.
Yeah.
All we have to do is know when it is so we can put the notice out there.
Yeah. Okay. So I think, thank you for reinforcing that, Kevin. And that is consistent with my conversations with Lauren and guidance we've gotten. So, I think, especially as we kick it off and we're trying to work our way through this, I think, and we have two topics and it looks like 7 members that are available and maybe 8, depending upon Michael as he frees up, that we should divide up the group and set up a public meeting around this when we round out with age friendly, who else might be coming, what the availability is. Anybody have a preference on where they want to spend their time?
Right.
7. What do you got, Ted?
I can't help but wonder if a lot of these questions that we're talking about don't require eyes on the street, getting out and walking to some of these locations or going to some of the locations that we're thinking about, doing things and really looking at it, not just looking at a map.
I think that's a great observation. And I think one of the reasons we'll benefit by being able to take these discussions outside, a Monday night, and the groups can decide how they want to approach that, what kind of data they want to bring for the discussion. But yeah, I think that's.
But then the question goes to, well, public location that, it doesn't have so much noise or whatever, those kind of issues, it's sort of, it's counterintuitive to what we really want to be doing, getting out onto the street, beating the pavement.
Just a point of clarification for that, Ted.
Yeah.
We have several boards and commissions that actually have walking tours. The tree board does one of those as a public meeting. As long as you tell people where you're going to be and what you're going to be doing, it's fine to say we're going to meet at the corner of Hendrick and Barber Drive at 10 o'clock in the morning.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, we've even done that, I think, on occasion. Okay. Rick, you have a preference? 4A or 7?
I don't.
No, we'll float you. How about you,
Yeah, I can
Oliver?
float.
Don't really have a preference, really. Don't really have a preference.
I'm going to put you at 7 because you spend a lot of time moving around town. You're going to know stuff. Yeah.
I'd help with 4A if I'm able to.
You?
4A if
4.
I'm able to, if the
Yep.
timing works.
Okay. David's out.
Well, I would, first off, I am totally excited about 4A. I'd love to virtually, not attend the meeting, but provide feedback. I mean, huge
Are you
opportunities.
gonna be allowed to speak English while you're gone?
No.
I don't know,
Won't be able- yeah.
actually, yeah, that could be.
If you're in
a
an
little tough.
immersion program, I don't want you to break any rules.
Yeah, I gotta make it stick.
Ted, where would you like to spend your time if you had to choose between 4A and 7?
I don't have a major preference. I could do either one.
Okay, I'll
Yeah.
decide for you.
Okay.
And maybe I'll wait on you guys until I hear from Lori and Andy. Do I have everybody? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yes, I do. Okay.
Hey, Matt,
Yeah.
could I just, when you're thinking about number 7, I know one of the examples was, whether it's written here, whether you said it, was like stripe all the crosswalks in town. Just so you know, we do that every year.
Okay.
So I wouldn't spend a lot of time trying to convince me to do that because we're gonna do it anyway.
Come on, give us a win.
Well, so.
We said crosswalks and he did it.
No, but if there's other things that, you know, I'll give you an example that I could think of, like the Sharrows on Main Street.
Yeah.
Those would be something to prioritize what we're doing, because we don't do those all that often. So just think about it in that context.
Yeah, I will. And I will advise the group that's working on number 7, check in with you before we come meet with April, because I'm sure you'll have some good insights for that.
So can I just say one or two things? So it sounds like basically, let's say for these pilots, we don't have to have everything figured out by next meeting, what we're doing, but we do have to have a pretty good idea of what our goals are and kind of maybe how we need things measured, because I'm sure Kevin's going to need some direction of like, hey, if we're thinking about, let's say adding bike lanes, I'd say, well, if we're going to add bike lanes, we should definitely make sure we get bike counts. Like, I know we probably would be tracking number of cars and speed and stuff, but if we're trying to actually see, are we pulling more bikes? Are bikes actually using this? So it's just kind of a mental thing of like, would we want to take just 1 or 2 minutes? Most of us probably don't have what the project is. There's a lot of stuff on Hendrick. One thing that's interesting about it is it's a perfect test case. I mean, it's actually like A Street's got some weird things there. We're talking about taking away parking, putting in planter boxes and putting in a bike lane for one block, but not the other 3. But Hendrick it's wide. It's got less obstruction for what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just a thought of, would we want to take a moment or just mentally say, okay, in the next month, we should really start thinking about, what are we trying to achieve so that we're going to be able to measure whether or not we achieve them or not.
Yes, I think that's a good idea.
And they have
Not-
some of that. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, you
I was
first.
just gonna say, they have some of that laid out in the pilot programs. So yeah, maybe it's just going through and making sure it's all in, they're not missing anything.
And I do remember the discussion we had about the pilot program with FHU and Kevin, that these 2 locations were chosen because they're different, right? That Hendrick being wide and open and A Street, being more in town, and we have to figure out how to solve the problem on both types. Having said that, I think we potentially open up to more similar locations so that we can test more infrastructure changes. Is that right? Does that make sense? Yeah. So, if Hendrick is wide and unobstructed, let's find another wide and unobstructed street in town to also test. And I think it's pretty simple, right? We're trying to and slow cars down. Traffic calming is about slowing cars And to some extent, I guess changing behavior, right? Making people have to focus on driving so they can't be, looking at their phone or something, right? I mean, I think that's kind of the nature of the goals of traffic calming. So I think but I'd love to hear other thoughts. I mean, if that's kind of where I think we're going, then we have to, collect the data before and after for those two things.
Right. I mean, I hope we do, more than just slow down cars. I'd love to see that, number of cars. Well, let's just say the number of cars stay the same. They just go slower, which is awesome. And that we actually have more people walking, more people biking. And it's just like I was just envisioning if I was to put out a post to the Soper Sun saying, hey, we're doing this pilot program. It'd be great to address that we are trying to make this more friendly and safer for cyclists and pedestrians. And at the same time, this is what we're doing as far as for cars.
Mhm.
So it's two things, not just slowing down the cars, but also showing that we're trying to create things to make it more enjoyable and safer for other modes.
Excellent point.
Yeah.
You're right. I mean, yes, I mean, I guess the assumption has been if we slow traffic, it'll automatically be safer, but
Right. But
that's not
let's tell
necessarily.
them, yeah, let's
Yeah.
just say like, we're doing this for this reason. We want you to come out and start utilizing
Right,
these safer roads.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, Michael, please. Yeah.
Question for Kevin on this subgroup that would look at 4A. Is the thing that would be helpful, would it be helpful for that group to basically come up with a list that prioritizes of the 20 or more things that they list out in the pilot projects? Is it helpful for that group to list give you a prioritized list based on such and such criteria? We think you should focus on this handful of elements.
It would be to a certain degree, but I would also just offer in the first year of doing this, I really think it would be smart to focus on areas where you want to reduce speed. Because right now, that's what we have the capacity to measure. I need to research with RAFTA and some other folks that do more of the pedestrian and bicycle counting, what technology we're going to need, and maybe to the point of, I don't remember who made it, Hendrick is a long stretch and it has multiple. Maybe we try some traffic calming this year, and then next year we have the tools to measure pedestrians, bicycles before and after, and then we turn Hendrick into a test for some like the bike lanes or something like that, so we can actually see, did we increase the number of people using the road versus the sidewalk and that stuff. We don't have the technology to do that, and I'm not going to get it by April.
Mhm.
So
Right.
So that's just, if we want to get something that's measurable and something we can evaluate, I would focus on speed this year. Let me find the technology for the other things that we can employ in the future.
Sure. Hold on a second, Greg, just to the extent that there might be a crossover in some places, right? Some of the things that aid bikes and peds might also calm traffic.
Exactly.
Yeah, so but I understand your point. Absolutely. What do you got?
Oh, is that on? I was just gonna say, when the data is being collected, it seems kind of tricky because when the equipment's out there, there's lines across the road, there's red cones next to the boxes on the side. It just screams to people like something's going on here. It's a speed trap, or it's some sort of monitoring, obviously. So just by measuring it, it actually changes the perspective and behaviors of the drivers. So that might actually be a way to calm traffic, is just monitor it. But that's what I kind of noticed, when it was on Hendrick before, by the park, because I'm out walking my dog. It's like you can just see people kind of cringing cringing as they come towards this thing, like, what is it, you know, because it's pretty obvious that it's something that's not usually there.
Right.
Craig Kafura, Kafura. And there is a radar sign, like the police have that up, is that collecting?
I don't think that is right, or is it collecting? Do you have?
It seems like it should be able to. But, I mean, that's skewed in a way, because it's flashing at people, but I'll walk out and people are, you know, it's 20 miles per hour, and people are still going over 25 right at it, so.
I thought one of them did, one of them didn't have the ability to, something like that.
And they were having some issues with the data downloads and actually getting useful data out of it. I appreciate Craig's point, but there's probably nothing that you're gonna do out there that's gonna be invisible.
Right.
And I think the traffic counting tubes are probably the least impactful. If, you know, if it's a concern of having the orange cones out there, we can try something different than that. But the bigger thing about those is that's why we do it for a long time too. I would agree, like the first day, people are like, what's going on here?
Right.
But the more we don't tell them that we're collecting speed data, they think we're just counting traffic. So they really don't change their behavior that much.
Yeah.
So is it perfect? No, but I think it's as close as we're gonna get.
We gotta, that's the technology we have, so we have to just try to make them as inconspicuous as possible. Right, yeah.
But if I could just go back to Michael's question, I wonder how will we know what to recommend in terms of what's going to be most effective as a first step? A traffic circle, a raised crosswalk, a beacon. I mean, these are all on the list. How do we make how do we make a recommendation to you that's informed about what would work?
I would focus this more on location versus, and maybe a couple of methods. I wouldn't go, let's do this exactly here. Let's talk about the locations at the meeting in April. And then maybe at the meeting in April, we can all talk about, I can offer my opinions of, if you say, we want to look at Barber Drive, we want to look at 8th and Garfield, we want to, wherever those locations are, we can have map here, we can have those things here. And then we go, okay, now that we know where we're going to focus, let's try a traffic circle here. Let's try this over here. And and those decisions don't have to be made by April. I need to know where I need to measure the before data in April, and we can hash out over the next month or so, what exactly are we going to do? It sounds like I'm pushing you off, and I'm really not. I'm just thinking of it process wise. Data is the first thing we need.
Yeah.
I
I don't know what criteria do we use to figure out what parts of Hendrick we want to see? I mean, maybe Craig can tell us. I mean, do people speed up, and is there a faster zone in among that street's not very long? Is there a faster zone in there that would be critical for slowing traffic?
Well, like between Greystone and Westridge, they come around the corner at Greystone from the park, and then there's a lot acceleration down towards the senior housing. And same thing the other direction. So it's kind of a straighter section there. So that's really where a lot of the speeding is.
Okay.
There's usually cars parked often at the park or at the community garden, and that kind of slows traffic down because it's friction. But there's really no one parks between Greystone and Westridge because most homes face other streets. The back of the homes are towards Hendricks, so it's really wide open. So in terms of allowing for parking there, I don't know. There aren't many homes besides the one I live in that, and we don't park in the street because I wouldn't want my car to get hit, but,
Yeah, okay.
yeah.
I think Rick too, I'm hopeful that as we pick locations and start to look at these streets as whole units, and we look at the list that was provided in map, that some of these things will start to jump out at us as making sense. And, you know, and I think a discussion, you know, at our meeting, whether it be April or May, about these, what we're doing, why and where will be really helpful in fleshing out what we do.
And I think that can be informed by what's in map. I wouldn't try to reinvent. We might go, maybe not there, but we'll do this here instead. But they have a lot of suggestions in there.
Yeah, it might be informed by the data you collect too, based on how fast cars are going in certain locations, right? Okay, any other comments on this plan?
So sounds
Yeah,
like
can
the majority of the data collection that you're going to be interested in going up until May is predominantly vehicular data, not bike ped type data, because bike ped data, I'm sure is going to change once the weather starts getting nice, which, you know, you can't rely on much before May.
And,
Yeah,
and we don't have the method to collect that.
Yeah,
data
as
yet.
Kevin was just saying, we don't really have the technology to collect that. We're going to be focusing on traffic
Yeah.
first. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, so we're done with this topic. Any other comments to wrap up that process? I think we have a plan. I'm going to check in with Andy and Lori to see if they have a preference, and then connect with Age Friendly to see who's available for there, and then put somebody in charge of each team and get it rolling. Yeah.
When you say the plan, are you talking Hendrick or the 11 points?
So we're talking about 4A and 7. Those are the two
Okay.
we're going to work on right now.
Okay. I have
Okay.
questions about other things, but I don't have a question on 4 or 7.
What's that? You know,
I have comments about other things, but I don't have anything.
yeah,
to say about 4 or 7.
I think we're focused on this right now. That's enough to bite off. We'll see how the system works, and then we'll move on from there. Hey, just one other question I have, Kevin. I know you guys have been working on the potential crosswalk at Atlantic. I'm really confused as where it's going to go. Can you help me understand where it might be dropped in? Because you got acceleration, you got a slow down lane coming, turning lane coming in, and then cars looking over their shoulder to come out. I'm not sure how far away and to the south or north it's going to go from the intersection. I'm just curious.
It'll be between the two entrances out of City Market.
Okay.
Slightly, and when I say that, maybe 20 to 50 feet to the north of where that sidewalk comes straight out.
I'm sorry, the sidewalk comes straight out of what?
From the City Market building toward the
North of the gas station, there's a big wide sidewalk that goes all the way from the City Market to the highway.
Yep.
The southernmost entrance to City Market.
No, it's in the middle between the two.
It's between the two entrances,
So it's
just to
gonna-
the north of the
Gas station.
gas station piece of it.
I'm sorry, we've got two entrances, right? We have the one to the south where the discussion is taking place about the acceleration lane. And it's gonna be to the north of that by 20 to some, what did you say?
No, it'll be in between the two entrances.
It'll be really in
to City
between.
Market.
Yes.
My reference to 20 to 50 feet is if you go out there and look where that sidewalk comes from the City Market building all the way out to the trail,
Yep.
it'll be about 20 to 50 feet north of there is where that
Okay.
crossing.
And it's
is.
a basic, yeah, and basically in between, and that's so pedestrians will, people coming out of City Market will presumably be merged in and looking forward, right, before they hit the crosswalk.
It is not in an area where there is a turn lane or a decel lane.
No, it's just people coming out, right, of City Market.
Right, but by that point,
They'll be
they'll be in
in
the
lane
one
and
lane.
visible. Okay, I was just curious about that. Thank you.
Yep.
Any, and while we're on it, I'm curious to what's going on with that acceleration lane. I know it came up
We
at the
passed it.
CDOT meeting, what?
I mean, we passed a whole legal agreement with them to do the acceleration lane, so.
So
that's
I
done.
know it went from, an acceleration lane that would merge and then now it's acceleration lane. It's just gonna go right into the roundabout.
Yep.
We did make significant requests, the council requested significant changes to the way the crosswalk crosses that acceleration lane so that it is a short.
I know it came up at your meeting and CDOT seemed to open the door to having discussion about it. And I just,
The door was not as open as you thought it was.
Yeah, they weren't as informed as.
I mean, when CDOT says something, they don't necessarily.
Well, they don't know every little degree of detail between. all
I just thought it was
the-
unfortunate because it seems that forcing cars to merge into a single lane and then exit into the roundabout would force them to slow down before they go into the roundabout. I thought it was unfortunate design change. What?
I don't think we will have to merge. It will end up going all the way to the roundabout.
Isn't that what's gonna happen? Is that
Want them to
acceleration
merge.
lane go right into the roundabout?
Yes.
Yeah, it just
Yeah.
becomes a two
I
lane,
thought the initial design was to have it not go all the way and it was gonna merge.
maybe, but I think it goes all the way now.
Yes, it does.
It was.
It was and it does. The permit was issued for it to continue into the roundabout
Yeah, so it was some point it was changed.
at CDOT's request.
Yeah.
Well, I want to give a shout out to Kevin because that work session with CDOT was really cool. I think the map was not 9 feet long. I think it was 8.5 feet, but it was a really cool map. So hopefully one day, we can see that even if there was a map like that of Hendricks, I mean, it just helps you visualize, a whole thing and what feeds in. But just want to say I thought it was
It was
awesome.
good. Yeah. Anybody else want last comment?
Oh, I have one last comment. So the one thing that I would love to work on or have the commission look at is it seems like one of the points that dealt with kind of helping to finalize or keep working on what our priority corridors are is missing. And it still seems to me that if we're trying to prioritize projects, we still need to have that vision for how are we really seeing people getting around, and just as far as priorities, like, well, if these are priority corridors, you'd hope we'd put those up higher up. And it just seems like we haven't really talked about.
That sounds like
Working on
it sounds like a vote to move that up higher on the priority list.
Well, for me, it's one of the highest, but that's just my opinion,
Yeah, no,
Just
let's talk about that.
Okay.
Hopefully we get through these two and then we'll go to the next two and we'll talk about that.
Yeah, it sounds like, you have like an immediate task, which is, trying to set the bounds of this immediate project, but I think you're right that the project list and its level of priority was definitely one of the things that I think felt the least 100 set in stone in terms of what's in the map. So I think there might be a process later in the year of like really trying to turn that list into more of a living spreadsheet or something that can be played with in terms of how are you prioritizing things against each other, or just is it being able to more actively think about what is that list, because the list has time frames, but it's not like hasn't been ordered strictly. I wouldn't say that's strictly about what's first over something else. But I think then as you start talking about priority corridors and wayfinding, and like, I think that is a good route to identifying your next level of items you want to put it near the top of the
Yeah.
list.
Or just help. Yeah.
Yeah, it helps bring focus to where the improvement should.
Yeah, like, I kind of said before is like, how do you help prioritize things? You might say, well, one bubble is how do kids get to school? Another one is it part of our priority corridors? Is there another one that, might help people who are, moving slower be able to get somewhere. So if all of a sudden you've got these 4 circles that come together, be like, ta-da, that's the project.
That's a good vision. I like that. Okay, everybody, thank you. Meeting is adjourned.